what we need to do is we need to design everything, whether it's a good or a service, so that it's designed to be built with as few materials as possible, that it's designed to be used as long as possible, so it can be repaired, that spare parts are available. And then when it comes to the end of its life, it's designed to be disassembled and those different components taken off into their various metals, plastic streams, and put back into circulation. And that requires design thinking at the front end. It can't happen afterwards.
Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. My name is Ken Tenser, CEO of SpyderWorks, a leading business consultancy for mid-market organizations and entrepreneurs globally. With me today is Frances Edmonds, Head of Sustainable Impact at HP Canada. Like this video if you enjoy our show and subscribe to our channel. Leave us a comment with who we should interview next. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Frances Edmonds, welcome to Say Hi to the Future.
I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
So Frances, I'll tell you what's really exciting for me having you as a guest today. There's a lot of talk about climate. There's a lot of talk about sustainability, but many of the people I come across are discovering that more recently, if you will. When I look at your career, when I look at your bachelor's, which I believe was environmental sciences, this is a long time passion. So tell us, one, how did you come to this as a passion? And just tell us a little bit about that path you've been on.
Sure. So first job out of high school was testing water quality to make sure it was fit for drinking. And part of that was also going into rivers and seeing the quality in the rivers in West Yorkshire, where I grew up. And the treat of my job was to go out and actually do the sampling. So I'd be driving around in the beautiful countryside, and I could make a linkage between land use disturbance or industrial work and the pollution and the poor quality water. And I thought, there's something here. I would like to know more about this. And so decided to go and take a degree in environmental science with the eventual idea that I wanted to go back and protect Yorkshire's waters, the rivers, which I'm very attached to. And my sport in those days was caving, which means you're underground, seeing the impact on the rivers as well. So it was a connection to the land, basically, and seeing the impact on human health through poor water quality as well.
So you have this youthful connection. And it's amazing. When I look at next gen today, they are so connected to the world in a way that, frankly, many of us weren't. And you had that connection. You took up that connection and went through. How did that translate? Because I know you're in Canada now. You're a little bit away from West Yorkshire, which actually my mom grew up very near to. How did you translate that to your corporate career and to where you are today?
Well, when I graduated from my 4-year degree course, which included a year co-op in heavy industry, I worked in the steel industry and a paint industry. When I graduated, I realized I didn't want to work in a laboratory anymore. So what kind of a job could I do with this new degree that not many people knew what it was? So I took a degree as what was known as a factory inspector. In this side of the pond, it's called a Ministry of Labour inspector. Mm-hmm. So what I got to do was go into workplaces to enforce health and safety systems. And of course, in those days, they were just introducing chemical safety legislation, which of course I had a background in. So got to learn and love heavy industry and big manufacturing and trying to do it in the safest way possible for both the employees and then also not following through that thing that we've done for 200 years. The solution to pollution is dilution. No, we should just stop using nasty things and substitute or contain them. So got into it in that way. And then I got an opportunity to come to Canada, and my first job here was working in the pharmaceutical industry. So slightly different than heavy industry, but still big manufacturing, and eventually worked my way into a tech job.
Well, and today it's funny, you talked about dilution, you talked about, I guess, the evolution of thinking about climate and sustainability. Today I hear a lot about the circular economy. Mm-hmm. What is, in your words, the circular economy?
It's not as complicated as it sounds. It's actually what our grandparents did. So if you think about them not buying very much, what they did buy, they bought things that would last and were built to last. And then, they would fix them, they would repair them, they would make them last as long as possible. And then they would try to recover what they could from what they could no longer use. So it's about redesigning our economy from the very word of design all the way through to end of life, and then taking everything that we've finished with and making sure nothing ends up in a landfill, and that it is truly doing recycling, unlike what we've been practicing in Canada, which is pretending to do recycling, really.
So essentially, we are truly reusing everything to its fullest capacity and
It
capability.
starts before the reuse. What we've done in Canada for the last 30 years is we've done sham recycling because we haven't required that change in design at the front end. What we need to do is we need to design everything, whether it's a good or a service, so that it's designed to be built with as fewer materials as possible, that it's designed to be used as long as possible so it can be repaired, that spare parts are available. And then when it comes to the end of its life, it's designed to be disassembled and those different components taken off into their various metals, plastic streams, and put back into circulation. And that requires design thinking at the front end. It can't happen afterwards.
What you're describing, though, in the design thinking, the thinking up front about how we design, build, bring to market, reuse, what are the incentives? I mean, to me, there's got to be, I understand the social good. There has to be the right political platform or will, I believe, because for a company to rethink everything, to reshape everything, there's incredible economic charges around that.
Yes, you've hit on one of the problems of implementing the circular economy, which is, a business is very much like a living organism. It's not going to deliberately kill itself or put itself out of business, right? And shifting from providing goods to, say, providing services, which is a key component of the circular economy, incurs a change in revenue, right? You're going from getting a sale every time you sell something to getting a steady income from a service that you might deliver.
Right.
And so for many organizations, it's very difficult for them to make that transition. It's easy for a company like HP because we could have one line of business take a hit while the other lines of business carry it through till we get to that steady state. Canada being a land of small, medium businesses, this is absolutely one of the issues that we're going to have to tackle. And there are lots of solutions, and we can probably come to that. But, it really requires all of us to start thinking about every dollar we spend in the capitalist economy and how we put that to work best. Do we simply buy the cheapest thing that's made from virgin plastics, that is not designed to be repaired, that is going to fall apart very quickly? Or do we want to buy something that's durable, repairable, upgradable, and can be properly recycled?
Boy, and that's a tough one to put out there, because you're really balancing, and I'll say it, people, I think, inherently want to do good, but coming out of the pandemic, we had another 75 basis point, rise in interest rates today. That's an incredible line to walk for the government, for the consumer, for the manufacturer. How is Canada thinking about that tightrope?
We've got some pretty aggressive climate goals, and frankly, they're not aggressive enough, right? So we know that the cost of not tackling climate is going to be significantly more than tackling the climate issues that we have. So it's not a do something or do nothing conversation that we need to have at this point, right? It is, which something do we choose to do? And if you think about how governments spend in Canada, they're spending about somewhere between 13 and 20% of GDP. They could send a very strong signal into the marketplace that manufacturing and selling services or goods in a more sustainable way is what we need to do. It's the fiduciary responsibility. We're already spending that money. And the estimates are, most people seem to think that it's going to be a lot more expensive to buy a more sustainable service or good. There's several studies out there that show, somewhere between 1% and 3% uplift, which is not that much if you think about what it will cost us if we don't start tackling climate change. The forest fires, the flooding, the heat waves, the things that are impacting us today are only going to get exponentially worse, and we need to start tackling them. And they're costing us today.
Well, they're costing us today, but there has to be that real belief, I guess, at the top of the corporation that this investment is critical to the corporation's livelihood, to the stakeholder livelihood, because unfortunately, not everybody believes that this is a real thing still.
I would argue against that. I would say most people smell the smoke, see the flooding. I mean, you look at what's happening in Bangladesh. I mean, simply put, how many climate refugees are going to be in the world right now, right? I think people are seeing the writing on the wall. They've all lived through a pandemic and the supply chain disruptions that went with that. There is no business as usual anymore. Things have significantly changed, and it's times of turbulence and changes to normal operating systems are opportunities for us to think about doing things differently. And so I think times of challenge are a good time to force changes that need to happen. I think one of the things that we are missing in Canada is the level of education around this. It's not just the education of climate change, yes or no, it's happening. I think most people agree it is. But what do they need to do about it is the next thing. And we have been sorely underinvested in climate literacy. I'm on the board of a small nonprofit called Learning for a Sustainable Future that works in the K-12 education space, and we've started doing a regular survey to look at climate literacy, and it's not very strong across the country. So obviously we're working hard on changing that. And there's a lot of youth today who are studying sustainability and want to, people want to do things. They want to get working on this.
I actually think that our next generation is fully invested in the good of humanity and society. So K to 12, this to me is starting at the grassroots, and as soon as we can vote, bringing it to how we vote through our wallets, how we vote at the ballot to say, no, this is just not acceptable anymore.
Yes, and we're seeing an explosion in the number of higher education courses in sustainability as well. And when we see how young people coming into the workplace today expect businesses to be performing, this is not a nice to have. They expect their companies to be working, to be purpose driven. It may not be climate driven, it may be something else, but they're expecting to be able to use the power of business for good. And frankly, business can do an awful lot of good. And if we work together with governments and civil society in general, what's to stop us? We can tackle this problem. It's still doable. But we all have to lean in and recognize we're in an emergency.
So what can corporations or businesses do to help with this emergency?
Well, the first thing is to set some aggressive targets. You need that guiding light of, are we going net zero or, whichever carbon target you want to pick, but not something that's pushed out to 2050. We need action today. The next 8 years are the most critical years. So we need to be, unfortunately, because we've left it so long, walking and chewing gum at the same time, which is educating our own employees and looking for the opportunities, but setting those very aggressive targets. And the biggest way that businesses today can take action, as I said, is looking at how they spend their money. Yes, you can be looking at your own impact, but we measure carbon in 3 scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3. And scope 3 is what you buy and what you bring in from the supply chain perspective. And it's usually 11 times bigger than your own operational carbon impacts. So looking at how you buying as a service, as I said, is the single biggest thing you can do in the circular economy. The second thing is, every Canadian has participated in recycling, but virtually no Canadians have ever looked to buy something that contained those recycled materials. If there's nowhere for those materials to go, you might as well just throw them in the landfill, right? So we need to create markets by buying with recycled content in mind, looking for companies who are running on renewable energy, looking at the risk, the reputation and the reporting and the transparency of the companies you choose to do business with. Transparency is a great driver of sustainability. It's no longer okay for large multinationals not to disclose their impacts on carbon, water, and forests and keep going. So don't do business with them if they're not prepared to be transparent.
So that's really interesting, because transparency can be to the market, and there are plenty of symbols on our cans and our plastics as to level of recyclability type of plastic. Are you suggesting that there is, just like now that there's those markings, there's non-GMO, that there's something that
Yes, we're starting to see, particularly at the consumer level around the world, this demand for more information. Where was my product made? What's in it? Not just food, but goods as
right.
well. What is the carbon footprint? And we're starting to see that data being populated. Now, does the buyer actually have the understanding to not be greenwashed and to be able to judge this? It's a very fast growing market of standards that need to be in place, but it's happening, and it's happening fast. And you could practice this today. FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, is the branding for wood-based products like paper, toilet paper, kitchen roll. You could buy that today. I change supermarkets if they don't sell the FSC toilet paper. I mean, it's you should never be buying a wood-based product again that does not have a responsible forestry mark on it, because you don't know if it's being made from illegally logged tropical rainforests. And we need our rainforests. They're protecting the planet.
So you've led, I mean, this is an incredible discussion, and just a backdrop, you have led HP, in my understanding, to become the most sustainable technology company in Canada. Tell us about that journey, because I mean, that's not something, A, that I believe happens overnight, and B, does not happen without a few people going, this is tough and expensive. Is it really an end goal? So what are those challenges?
Right. So I would never make a claim like that without backing it up, because I would be greenwashing if I didn't. So for people who want to see the proof points to that, www.hp.ca/sustainable impact, which is the name of our sustainability program. So you can see the multiple proof points that I use to back up my claim. And you're absolutely right. This doesn't happen overnight. This is, we're an 80-plus-year-old company whose founding fathers said the real reason HP exists is to make a difference. Yes, we have to make a profit to make the difference. So there's nothing wrong in making a profit, but we're here as a company, a group of highly talented individuals coming together to make a difference. And for 80 years, we've been hiring people who want to do that. And you can see the passion in the employees. It's why I'm here still after 23 years. It's a joy to work with employees who really do want to make a difference. So then you need that management structure that enables them to actually try things that are new and different. Sustainability is about change management at the end of the day. And we have a saying, which I really like, which is, we're an innovation company, but to make innovation work in the technology sector, you have to fail fast. So if something's not working, just recognize it, admit it's okay to fail, and go on and move to the next thing. So when it comes to sustainability, the proof points for being Canada's most sustainable technology are a blend of the things that I've been able to implement in Canada, in my own region, and some of the things that we do corporately, like the transparency and disclosure. So we just issued our 21st annual sustainability report. Many companies are only just writing their first one, right? So that commitment to transparency and disclosure, it comes from the top. Things like the fact that every employee has 4 hours a month of paid time to volunteer on whatever they want. Now, we want them to donate their skills because that's more valuable to society, and we offer all kinds of interesting volunteer opportunities for them, and we track their time to show that we are making a contribution back to Canadian society. So very broad things, even down to, we offer the world's most secure, from a data privacy perspective, printers and PCs. And most people go, well, why is that part of a sustainability proof point? Well, if you don't trust that your device is protecting your data, that's not good. So that was a sort of a quick overview. But the other proof point is, of course, what do other people say about the work that we're doing? And we're listed on quite a few awards, one of Canada's greenest employers, but the one that I'm most proud of is being listed as one of the top 100 most sustainable corporations worldwide. And that is by Corporate Knights, a Canadian organization that does a lot of really good work in this space.
Toby's built a beautiful organization over years with Corporate Knights. Following on that line, can you tell us a little bit about the HP Dragonfly Notebook? Because that is also an ahead of the curve type of product.
Yeah, and it has a Canadian connection too, which is great. So the Dragonfly is the world's first notebook made with ocean-bound plastics. This comes about because of an engineer and a Canadian small business called the Laverne Group. And 2 decades ago, an engineer was sitting there, an HP engineer was sitting there going, well, we've been taking back these cartridges for 10 years at that point, because it's a 30-plus-year-old program now. And we were taking the plastics out of these cartridges, and we were putting them into low-use applications like cafeteria trays. But this was very valuable plastic and high-grade plastic. And you thought, well, why can't we put it back into the same products and that closed-loop recycling? Mm-hmm. So he searched globally looking for a company that could help us do this, and we ended up in Montreal with the Laverne Group. Fast forward 20 years, we are making circular plastics, which is possible to do with a much lower footprint than virgin plastics, obviously. It's not as easy as it sounds to do, because as you can imagine, there's a million business decisions made between, oh, isn't that a good idea, and actually implementing it. But we are hard at work on a 30% post-consumer recycled plastic goal by 2025 across our print and PC portfolio. And you might think, well, Frances, 30% is not very much. Surely you can do better than that. But if I told you the industry average is somewhere below 2%, you might think, yeah, we can do a lot better than that. And then we weren't getting enough cartridges back, so we realized we'd have to find used plastic from other sources. And the first source we went to was used drinking water bottles. We're using 1 million a day in the process in Montreal. And so a nonprofit in Haiti came to us and said, well, we've got informal waste pickers collecting ocean-bound plastics in Haiti. Do you think you could take these plastics? And we said, let's give it a go. Fast forward a few years, and here we are literally putting tons and tons of ocean-bound plastics into products. And the Dragonfly was the first, but we just keep on going. It's pretty awesome.
It's fantastic, and it just shows what a connected world we have. And it also goes to the connected commitment to a better world.
Well, and that is down to the individuals going, well, we think this is a good idea, let's give it a try, right? And seeing what can happen. And actually, we were launching we put a $2 million wash line for the plastics in Haiti, and the equipment had just been delivered as the pandemic hit. And so here we are, a $2 million investment in a country that was experiencing a lot of civil unrest. At the start of a pandemic, our engineers were all called home,
right.
Do not pass go, right? So how are we going to implement this? So we figured out a way, working with the local Haitian engineers, to actually build this plant remote, using remote technology. It was pretty awesome. So, where there's a will, there's a way.
As our time today comes to an end on Say Hi to the Future, I have one last question. You are involved with something called Eco Babes and Women in Sustainability. What is it?
Well, Eco Babes is simply a women's networking group for women in sustainability, and that's everything from people who build windmills to monitoring sharks, whatever you want to call it, everything in between. And I realized quite early on, most sustainability professionals are a single individual in an organization. So it can be quite a lonely job because you're always trying to get other people to do things. That's your job. The definition of a sustainability professional is to be in everybody else's line of business and helping them do what needs to be done. So it can be lonely, and also it's a very broad subject matter. So you can't possibly know everything that you need to know. So there's value in knowing who's who in the zoo. Somebody needs to know about technology, they can call me and ask me. I need to know something about building sustainability, I can call another Eco Babe and ask them about building sustainability. So it was a way to share the load and to also encourage women who tend, especially early in their careers, to prioritize family and work over their own networking. And we know that men tend to do that very naturally, whether it's on the golf course or wherever. So I created this group, and I've now handed it on to a couple of very passionate people too. Emma Murphy stepped up to take this from Green Economy Canada, so she's running with it now, and we hope to dust it off and get a few more meetings. We had to obviously go virtual during the pandemic, but it's really important, and everybody should prioritize networking in this space in particular, because it's changing so fast, and it's about knowledge sharing and helping each other up.
Yeah, and I think what you just said too, knowledge sharing and helping each other up, especially when the ultimate goal here is, as you said, to keep the planet livable for all of us. I think it's a wonderful undertaking. So, Frances Edmonds, thank you so much for your time today, for joining us here on Say Hi to the Future, and look forward to hearing you on stage.
Thank you. Looking forward to it too.
Take care.